Welcome to Home Organizing for Beginners. I'm Tammy, your home organizing educator. In each episode, I share a microscopic home management topic. That just means it's something you can implement today from start to finish if you so choose. Today's microscopic home management topic is deciding what to do with school paperwork. Do you struggle to part with items that you feel are sentimental? That is me like 110%. When it came to the papers the kids would bring home from school or even daycare, like way back in the day when they were in daycare, like 0 years old, But I kept it all. Every single piece of paper. Daycare would complete this half sheet of paper or this half sheet form for each of the kids every single day on how their day was. And I kept them all. And we still have them. They're in binders sorted by date, one for each kid. I will attribute that to my husband. That was definitely not me back in the day. Yeah, I was just completely overwhelmed when the kids were all little. They're very close together in ages. So I will attribute that to my husband. And I am so thankful that he organized all of that for me. Maybe that seems a little extreme, but yet it is completely true. And I also kept all of their artwork, all of the scribbles on paper, the rotini glued on construction paper. I truly kept all of it. I do have bins of their artwork, but then they got into school and I had no idea how much more paper would come home with them every single day, literally every single day. And I was overwhelmed and I felt confused on what to do with it. So I kept it, boxes and boxes and boxes of it. So once we hit middle school and the flow of papers and artwork slowed to almost nothing, I was thankful. I felt like I could breathe, but I still had all of the boxes and boxes of everything I had saved, and it was shoved on the shelves in our garden shed. So a few years ago, we had to move the garden shed, and it became evident that it was time to do away with as much of it as possible. But I still couldn't just throw it away. Though immensely painful, reasons that this was painful is truly a topic for another day because I could go on, but maybe even a one on one conversation, which is something we can have within the course Home Organizing for Beginners. The link to that course will be down in the show notes. So, though immensely painful, I looked at every single piece of paper and I made a decision of what to do with it. This task literally took me 3 to 4 weeks. I sat in our garage for several hours a day by myself, and I will admit, in a puddle of tears, sifting through it all. Every math sheet, every painting, every notebook, every scribble on a piece of paper, and most of all, the memories, right? It was a very emotional yet productive time. That task has really made me an expert on the types of paperwork that kids bring home and what the options are you have to disposition it, deciding what to do with it. As a mom looking for a fresh start in her home organizing journey, you want to be set up for lasting home organizing solutions, right? That means you're going to have to do something different than you've done before or what society tells us. Instead of saving every piece of paper, notebook, and painting your kids bring home, you can create a decision strategy. Instead of saving every single piece of paper or notebook or painting each of your kids brings home, you can create a decision strategy. In today's episode, I'm sharing what a decision strategy is, why you need one, and how to create one. A decision strategy helps you know how best to decide what to do with all of the different paperwork that comes into your home. Instead of sorting through everything and deciding every single time, you can now decide in advance. And then when you actually have to go through those pieces of paper, you're already going to know what you're doing with them. So that decision strategy also helps you reduce decision fatigue. Have you ever heard of decision fatigue? That just means we all make enough decisions within the course of the day. We don't need to make it even more decisions. Like if we can reduce the number of decisions in a day, that's going to benefit us in the long run, right? So that's what a decision strategy is. Let's talk a little bit about why you need a decision strategy. Having one in hand when you tackle your paperwork process is going to reduce the amount of time it takes. So if you refer back to the last episode, episode 35, I share with you exactly how to process all of the paperwork coming into your home every day from your kids. Okay, one of the steps is a quick review. Another step is to actually process all of that paperwork. And when you process that paperwork, you're picking each piece of paper up and deciding what to do with it. So instead of you're having a bad day, so you don't want to keep that piece of paper because your child, and then maybe this is a bad example, but maybe your child was disobedient and you're kind of frustrated and you're kind of mad and you decide, I don't want to keep that artwork, and you throw it away, only to regret it later when you're in your not mad mind, if you will. So, does that make sense? Having a decision strategy is going to make processing that paperwork easier. It's going to make it a consistent process as well. Okay, so you know what a decision strategy is. You know it reduces decision fatigue. You know it's going to save you time. Now let's talk about how to make it happen. So, creating a decision strategy regarding the school papers specifically is unique to you. It's important that you recognize that there is no right or wrong answer. Your decision strategy absolutely should be different from mine. When you allow this realization to set in, the process of creating your decision strategy becomes so much easier. You want to put out of your mind any preconceived notions that you have about what society or others have told you to do with this paperwork. Instead, focus on you, focus on your kids and your home. You're really focusing and developing what's right for you and your family in your current season of life. Okay, are you there? If you are, then you're ready to start creating your decision strategy. Step one. Categorize the paperwork your kids are bringing home from school. Some examples are artwork, tests, classroom practice sheets, maybe there's some projects thrown in there, activity sign up sheets, field trip permission slips. Don't get stuck on this too much. Write down the categories you know right now and the things that you can think of right now. You can always add to the list later. Step 2. In the list of categories you've identified, which are the ones you know exactly what you want or what needs to be done with them? Such as field trip permission slips, right? You know those need to be filled out and sent right back to school. When you're utilizing the quick review process that you learned about in episode 35, then you're going to be filling that permission slip out right away and sending it back to school the next day. So that's an easy one. Perhaps classroom practice sheets, because there's a fairly large volume of those that come home every day. Maybe those are like, yeah, I'm just going to throw them away. I'm going to give them a quick once over, flip over, look at each side, make sure there's not some cute little drawing up in the right hand corner that you want to save. But for the most part, maybe you're just going to throw those away. So, does that make sense? In this step, you're only considering the ones you already know. These are really the easy decisions. The rest will be dealt with in another step. When you decide, write down your decision next to that category. So, for example, field trip permission slips is one of the categories. Next to it, you write quick review and back to school. Like that's your decision on what you're doing with these things. Maybe classroom practice sheets, you're just throwing away. That's what you write next to it, throw away. All right, I hope that makes sense. Step number 3. So in steps 1 and 2, you made some decisions. In doing so, you've built momentum and confidence. Now you're ready for some decisions that will take a bit more thought. They aren't hard decisions, but they'll just take a little time and a little thought. I think one of the most challenging categories to make decisions about is artwork. When the kids are at daycare or in their early elementary years, they bring home every single piece of paper they scribble on. It's just a lot to deal with, and if you're sentimental like I am, you're going to have a hard time throwing it away, even if you're not sure anymore which kid made those scribbles or glued the rotini onto the construction paper. Okay, let's get to the crux of it. If you are sentimental and want to keep it, keep it. If you are ready to throw it away, throw it away. What I've learned from the women I've worked with is that we often get stuck on trying to figure out what the right thing is to do. If you take nothing away from this episode, take away the fact that nobody on earth knows what's right for you better than you. I cannot tell you what the right thing to do with artwork is for you, right? Your kids are different than mine. I am different than you. I feel differently. We all are different. So take a moment and pray for clarity, then decide. Note on the list of categories what your decision is. It may be more in depth than keep or throw away. You may gather all the artwork together for each child and then let them decide which 2 or 3 to keep from the past week or month. All right, so step number 4, we are getting to the end of it. Step number 4, basically repeat step 3 for all of the remaining categories. Just take your time, think through it, pray for clarity, and write down your decision. Step number 5, place your documented decision strategy in the inbox where all your kids' paperwork is placed by them each day as referenced in the last episode. Then it's going to be available to you to use as you sort through all of their papers. As you work through this process and utilize the paper processing system from episode 35, you'll be set with managing all the papers your kids bring home from school throughout the entire school year. One last thing, know that what you decide today is not set in stone. This does not have to be a one and done thing. If you change your mind later, just update your decision strategy. Because I know for me, had I gone through and thrown away any of the kids' paperwork when they were first bringing them home, I would have been distraught. It would have been way too hard for me, and I would have never been able to make it happen on a daily basis. But I also know a few years later, I was ready. I felt ready to part with those items. I knew I didn't want to store boxes of papers anymore. So that's what I have for you today. If this episode hit home with you, I'd love to know about it. Leave me a 5-star review and what resonated with you the most. Thanks so much. Have a fun and productive weekend. I'll be back here next week sharing tangible and simple instructions about home organizing, cleaning, and time management. I'll see you then.